Yoganali. Hello, friends. I'm so happy to see everyone tonight in the light of the full moon. The trees that you saw in that video were the trees that were here with me for the last 30 some years. And I want to call your attention to the contrast. As I speak about my relationship with the trees, you just saw all the beautiful trees when I made that video last summer. And now I want to show you after the storm came in what it looks like. Pamela, if you would share the photo that I took last night with the full moon. You can see the devastation of the hurricane and how so many of those beautiful trees are lying on the ground now. And I feel deeply the relationship with those trees in this experience. Knowing them as I walked on this sacred mountain at my home here for over 30 years. Feeling them as I came close to them and walked past them. And the trees don't speak English and they don't talk about philosophy and opinions and words as much as you feel their heart. They're connected with all the other trees and they're also connected with us. And so if we give them our full attention from our heart, they speak heart to heart with us. And we realize over time, as we build our relationship with the trees, that they are our landmarks. They are showing us where we are and where the sun is and where the moon is and how we can interact with everything in the forest. The birds are often in the trees, the bears are often in the trees. So much of life in this forest on the sacred mountain is connected to the trees. And I'm grateful that my lightning trees are still standing. The best medicine that we have is the tree that survives the lightning strike. And I'm lucky to have two of those here on the mountain, and they are still standing, strong and beautiful. And the last tree that you saw in the video with that drumming journey for peace has a wedding knot in it, has a marriage knot that was probably put there hundreds of years ago. And it is also still standing. It lost a few limbs, but the one with the wedding knot is still there. And I'm so grateful to be able to call on the familiar in the trees and in the surroundings that are still here as I look for new landmarks with so many down, as the bears look for new sanctuary trees. So many of their sanctuary trees came down, and that's where the mama bear teaches the cubs to climb. I've seen that so many times with the same trees. The mama bear showing the baby bears the first climb up a tree. And it's so beautiful to see because so often they're like all of us. You know, they climb up the tree and they turn around to come back down. And Mama Bear gives them a swat on the butt and turns them back around and teaches them how to back down the tree instead of turning around and tumbling down on their head. So life is like that sometimes. That's what Helene has been for me. It's just been a swat on the butt to find a new way of coming down and rising again, like the heron in the ashes in our Salagi ways. So, on that note, I want to ask Pamela to play a video of SD Youngwolf's art while he sings a song for us and opens us up in a beautiful way, and allow his art and his song to introduce him, because that is so much of who he is. So SD and Pamela, when you're ready, come on in, and Pamela will start the video of some of SD's art while he sings a song for us and then talks to us about relationship. So you need to unmute, SD. Can you unmute? Just there you go.
So these are some photos of the kinds of art that I do, which includes oil paintings, sand paintings, and masks, gourd art.
Mm.
Wahige goi, wahige goi, wahige goi, wahige goi, watatila hati iyu, watatila, watatila, watatila hati iyu, wahige goi, wahige goi. Wahige goi, wahige goi, watatila haji iyu. Watatila, watatila, watatila haji iyu. Wahige goi, wahige goi. Wahige goi, wahige goi, watatila haji iyu. Watatila, watatila, watatila haji iyu. Wahige goi, wahige goi. Wahige goi, wahige goi, watatila haji iyu. Watatila, watatila, watatila haji iyu. Wahige goi, wahige goi. Wahige goi, wahige goi, watatila haji iyu. Watatila, watatila, watatila haji iyu. Wahige goi, wahige goi. Wahige goi, wahige goi, watatila haji iyu. Watatila, watatila, watatila haji iyu. Wahige goi, wahige goi. Wahige goi, wahige goi, watatila haji iyu. Watatila, watatila, watatila haji iyu.
Your art is just arresting there, brother. It's beautiful. It
Wado.
takes time to really look and take in each one.
Mhm.
Nice.
So, are, are you going to show the tribal ones?
Yeah, Steve, when you're ready to talk about that, we'll show that video too.
Okay. So I'm ready.
Okay, Pamela. Then whenever you're ready.
So these are some photos I wanted to share from around the world. This one is a sunset in Thailand. This one is a welcoming dance by the Bodo tribe, which is a tribe of about 1 million. And this is, she called me her grandpa. And this is the Wancho people, who is the tribe that adopted me in the northeast of India. And this is at a school with all the boys. It was a boys' tribal school after a storytelling. And this is in Colombia with a gathering of the tribes of Colombia that I was singing for them. And this is a Wancho Oria celebration. So each of those tribes, they have a yearly celebration, which is a dance or dances. And, one tribe that was the ones that were, a lot of the women all dressed in yellow. That's the Kasi people who I was, we were surprised to find out the similarities between Cherokee and Kasi culture, because having many things in common, from being matrilineal to stories, creation stories, and other kinds of stories, having the same things, similarities in dress. And so I so much enjoy going to these celebrations and dances. With the Kasi people, their yearly dance is huge. There's thousands of people there all dancing together. And it's called the Happy Dance of the Heart. And the men dance around the women. The women dance in place and the men dance around them in a counterclockwise motion. And everything about it has a symbolism, and the symbolism there is that in the center is what they hold most dear, and what is most precious, which is their women. It means the home, the hearth, representing the children, and the family, the connectedness, the unity of their people. So, shall I just go into my talk, Gail?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay.
Son.
Well, I wanted to speak on relationship because I think it's a very important thing at this time, especially because I feel that relationship has broken down a lot. And when I say relationship, I know a lot of people go right to relationships. And I think that says a lot right there, because relationship, we're related. We're all related. Mitakuyatsi. And that connectedness is a continuous central theme of many cultures that is said in many ways, the connectedness. And, when the relationship a child has, the first relationship is with the mother, and then the family, and then the earth. And I think introduction to the earth is a very important thing, because it's very central, very basic to traditional cultures to honor the mother who supports us all. And that's why in many cultures, acknowledgement and giving thanks to the earth is an important thing. There's different tribes, native tribes have what's called by some the grandfather teachings. We have the same, we call it the 7 virtues. And these are all about relationship, starting with love, and then respect, humility, honesty, courage, generosity, and wisdom. And those are very, very important things in our culture. And meaning traditional culture, like I say, has broken down. And nowadays, these kind of teachings have not been passed on very much to the young ones, but they're a good guide, I think, a good guide for life, for life itself. And in some tribes, and probably has been that way in mostly all tribes, that there is a kind of code of conduct that is taught. And it's very much lacking in this culture. Like the relationship with one's parents is one of great respect. And in some tribes I've been with, the relationship is different with other people. It's even different within the family. If you're relating to an aunt or an uncle, it's different from relating with your parents. It's a joking relationship where that's allowed. But just the basic respect, courtesy, used to be called manners, very much lacking today. Like traditionally, there's great respect given to elders. I think that has really broken down a lot. When I went to Standing Rock, that was a wonderful experience because there are people from all different tribes coming together. Even ones that used to be enemies could now be in circle and honor and respect each other. And I heard some things being spread around, like never argue with someone who's older than you. That's a very unusual thing to hear, but that's an example of traditional teachings. Because you honor the elder ones because they have walked this Mother Earth for longer, and they have a reason for the way they think, the way they behave, and honor them for their wisdom that they might pass on to you. The relatedness of all things, like I say, is common to different cultures. In Buddhism, they was called the Eightfold Path of right action, right thought, right livelihood, doing things all in a way that is impeccable, your behavior, as a way leading to freedom and enlightenment. It is, I think, the way I would say is, it is through relationship that the world exists, because we all are part of the world and we all depend on each other. Again, in Buddhism, I think there are many parallels between the teachings of Buddhism and indigenous wisdom around the world. And there's something called the law of origination, meaning that everything is interdependent. And as Thich Nhat Hanh, a Buddhist teacher, would say, he calls it interbeing, that we exist together. So in this Buddhist teaching, it says that nothing can exist without the existence of everything else. It's all connected. So, and that comes to what I call the colonized mind, because the colonized mind is a different way of thinking that is not based on respect and interdependency, but based on dominance and appropriation. And it's, I know that all of us, including myself, we think in ways that are colonized and we don't even realize it. And to me, one of those things is appropriation, to have the attitude that, and I've heard it said many times, well, I can take what I want from wherever I want, anytime I want. That's my right. And that's far from the indigenous way, I think, of thinking, which is one of respect. You know, and it's funny that some of those same people will think differently. Like I had that very thing said by a musician friend of mine, that I can take whatever I want from anywhere I want, anytime I want. And yet he's a musician who composes songs and copyrights them. So kind of a contradiction there is very common, that appropriation, entitlement, and privilege go together. And respect. There's a concept from South America. It's called Aini. And Aini means reciprocity. You know, in Native American tribes, there's a tradition that when you take something from nature, that you give something in return. And that's such a valuable teaching for children to learn reciprocity and how to give back. And so there's a woman in my tribe just recently who told a story about she's teaching her daughter native ways. And one day they were out in nature and her daughter went and picked some leaves and said, look at these leaves. And her mother said, it's best that you give something before you take something like that. So you ask the plant for their leaves. So she put those leaves back and she looked up and she said, I would like to get those leaves off that tree, but it was too tall, it was too high for her to reach. And she said a little prayer, and a wind came along and blew the branch low enough for her that she could pick those leaves. So I think that's a very beautiful story, because I think it represents something that when we act in a certain way and behave in a certain way of respect with nature, nature itself can reciprocate and help you. So I think that's, if anyone has anything to say or a question to ask, that would be fine. And I'd like to sing another song. And
thank you, SD. We're gonna allow some time for discussion when everyone is finished.
Oh,
that's okay. We're just
okay.
Allow our wisdom council and our grandmother council members to speak for a little bit, and then Michael's going to tell us about recognizing wisdom and wisdom council and grandmother's council, and why he has chosen to have a council when we are wrapping everything up. So at this point, I'd like to ask Patricia Aguirre in Brazil to talk to us briefly about fire and water, both inner and outer, please, in
Okay.
relationship.
Okay, so just Aguirre, not Aguirre. Aguirre, Aguirre.
Thank you. I need lots of language lessons.
No, it's fine. I mention fire and water because in the work that I do and the traditions that I follow, it came very clearly what's happening outside in this planet of ours, the fires that are super, at least here in Brazil, they're amazing what's happening, and in other places as well. The floods, the water that is over flooding, and so I had a workshop with some friends where I talked a lot about fire and water. But first of all, how does that inside of us? Because what's out there is inside of us. What's inside is outside. And the two traditions of our ancestors that I love is the Taoism and the Toltec tradition, which I see a parallel. They're very intimate correlation. So talking about the Taoists that made the correspondence of what's out there within our body, the elements are, it's so clear, like water is in our kidneys, in our sexual area, and then we have the wood on the liver side, and then the fire in our heart, and then on the right side, left side, we have earth and metal in the lungs. So all these elements here create a circular creative way of one feeding the other. And when you have one in excess, it's going to affect the other one. So I'm not going to go into details of that, but what I observed most, and I asked our group that was practicing, is to see, how is it that within us, the fire just blows out, and fire in the Taoist tradition, the inner alchemy, has to do with our hearts, with hatred, with impatience, intolerance, you just, blow up completely, right? So that happens with our emotions. It's not bad or good, it's just negative, and it really is going to affect our health, our lives. And the water element in this that I was talking about, that I'm talking about, is related to fear. When you have excessive fear, that's the negative emotion that goes to these areas, affects us, and it's the water element when it gets dirty and shitty, and it just goes, or it gets stuck. It won't, it's trying to go, and there's something there, a barrier, and then it turns it on. So these two elements. So we worked closely with, how is that within us? How does the media that is putting in our heads, like SG talked about the colonization. I use the word domestication, the socialization, that keeps it. This is how our things, this is what it is. And we, put that belief system. So, and we are colonized. We are, the fear, and fear is related to the element water. So if inside of me, my water is not, flowing, the opposite of fear is serenity, tranquility, quiet, and if it's not, it's this fear makes it, we'll have a specific way of that water expressing itself. And the same thing with fire, when we get super frustrated, angry, hatred, and I just burn everything out, what happens, right? So we worked on both elements, and to my understanding, these traditions, our ancestors were so clear, so amazing to bring us to look at nature And the reciprocity that was mentioned by SD, I think, is something so important. And I would just add that our breathing is not, we're not being reciprocal. I don't know if that's the correct word in English. We inhale, 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 and we don't give back. Well, you know, we are not being using this inhale and exhale in a way which reciprocity is being exercised. We get the oxygen, but we don't give the CO2 back in a proper way, in its rhythm, and it's really, you know, in and out completely. So breathing to these traditions is fundamental to learn how to breathe with our abdominal area, not here in the lungs, and, you know, and observe nature and connect with nature. Just an example, I was very inspired by your talk, SD, and it fits in so well with the traditions that I follow closely. But the trees, for example, and what you brought, Gail, to show us the trees, you know, beautiful trees, and then all of a sudden, where are they, right? And I have a habit of walking with my grandchildren in the streets. I don't know if I shared this already, but I was walking with my a couple of years ago with a 3-year-old granddaughter, and there was a tree, a beautiful tree that had broken all the cement there of that place, you know, where the roots just break it. And she stops and looks at me and says, "Ah, what happened?" And all I said was, what would happen if your mom or your dad put you in a little box when you're tiny and you're growing? What would happen? And she said, "I would break it all. I would explode that." And I says, well, here we are as you know, I didn't have to explain it verbally. It was so clear. And we walked around watching some trees need roots that go straight down. They don't need so much space. And each one has its own way of expressing, way of growing. So it's so important to observe. And in Taoism, we do the tree practice where we're in front of a tree and we breathe with a tree. And, you know, I do that almost daily, you know, this talk with a tree, right? So this conversation about nature that you brought, I think to me is basic in whatever we do in terms of sharing. And impeccability, for example, another word you used, SD, in the Toltec tradition, the impeccability is the correct use of, it's not, talking, it's very simple. It's how do we use our energy? How are we using our energy, you know, in a balanced, harmonious way? That's being impeccable, right? So I think these reconnecting with our ancestors, that with this wisdom that is there, is basically connecting with nature and being capable of observing and connecting within our own selves, our inner kingdom here, and see how that works. How do the waters affect the wood, the fire, you know, all this movement around that happens within us, we're seeing out there. The excessive fear being installed, programmed within us. How does that affect my waters and my fire? So just, you know, in brief, to me, how we can do that, you know, to bring that in a way that it provokes the children, the adolescents. I do that with my kids, you know, with my grandchildren, and walk and see trash in the street, whatever is there, you know, for nature. I don't have to talk about it. It's just observe. And the one last thing also about trees is the bamboos. When you look at bamboos, you know, that's why the Taoists use a lot the symbol of the bamboo. It is oak inside. Do you say oak inside when it's, how do you say in English? It doesn't have anything. It's
Hollow.
Anyway, what?
Hollow.
Okay. Hollow
Hollow.
is the word. They're hollow, right? And you never see one bamboo alone. Never. It's a group. It's always many bamboos together, and they're hollow. They go very deep, deep, deep. The height, the roots go down as high as they go up, and they're hollow, and they're together. You know, they're united. There's a relationship there. So I think that if we use nature to express what we're trying to communicate to whoever is around us, I think it will be much, much better at this moment. So that's it, just the shorty of the fire, water, the elements, and how they correspond inside with outside.
Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, that's very helpful. We are like bamboo. And we have about 5 minutes apiece for Becky and Michael, and then we'll stay a little longer for discussion. If anyone has questions, at that point, we'll open the chat and the mics. And Becky, if you want to give us about 5 minutes of your sharing now, that would be beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you both for what you've shared, and Gail too. I wanted to ask SD, who's apparently, it's beautiful that you've been to visit so many tribes and take part in their ceremony and observance. I just wondered if amongst them it's common that they have something like clan systems.
They do have clan systems, but I was just realizing the other day that I should have learned more about that when I was with them. I have asked them, and they said that they do have that, though. But I don't know. That's something I'm going to find out, though, more about.
Okay. Because when you were speaking about appropriation and how entitled some members of society feel to just go ahead and adopt, like, look at me, I think I'm a cowboy, you know. But like emulation, or they say flattery, or like copying is the flattery or whatever. The one thing that they don't really want to appropriate is a new system that does bring us into relationships that matter, that can put us in alignments that can be effective in not only promoting but holding on to those best values that we once had, In the expression of a clan system, when you embody those beautiful virtues and teachings, grandfather teachings, what happens is it becomes like an honor system, like it's not just you that your behavior is reflected on, but your mom and dad, your grandma and grandpa, your aunties and uncles, if you behave in a way against the well-being of the tribe, everybody else feels responsible for your behavior and has the right to come and correct you. In fact, the responsibility to correct you. And this mega liberal society is saying, just do what you want, be what you want. That's your human right, And it seems to cause a lot of conflict. Like, I'm trying to get into the depths of what it is that's really wrong with society, like the sickness that's invaded it to the point where nobody knows what the fuck's going on anymore, And I'm sorry to be blunt about it, but the context of a family, an individual is in a family, and a family is in a community is in, it's nested circles, and they work outward to be the building blocks of the nation, and the nation can be multi-peopled nowadays. It's the fact of life that we all have to deal with. Like, there's a lot of different cultural ways being all thrown in the pot. And where I get a little bit like freaked out is it's a homogenization pot meant to just turn us all into some kind of like mindless consuming machine that keeps them in their mansions and their yachts and stuff. And meanwhile, like you said, all the values, all the things that make the richness of life, that make the importance of all the roles of our society, like, it's pretty sacred to be an auntie or an uncle. It's pretty sacred to be a mother or a father or a grandmother or a grandfather. It's pretty sacred to have babies around and try and influence and raise them right. Surround them with the songs, the dances, the values, the ways, so they can grow up and know them and pass them on and on. And if it was good, it will endure. If it is bad, it will of its own dissipate, because bad is a bad vibration. Nobody wants to carry that. So I don't know what I'm trying to say here really, but just that we have to all give more thought to that. The deeper, the truer aspects of what relationship really means. Like, for me, I feel like the work needs to be done in our peer groups. Women of a similar age, men of a similar age, youth, if we instruct them how to do effective counsel with one another, as in each of us in this circle has an equal voice, an equal right to express an opinion, type of thing. And know that our purpose at this point is just to figure it out. Like, what are we going to be going forward? What is our central responsibility? Which it is, in my mind, that most important responsibility is for us to put our good minds together to determine what kind of future the children are going to have. And that's the one we're all abdicating so carelessly, in my mind. So that's my 5 minutes, and I'm very grateful for having this chance to speak it. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Yeah. And Michael, will you tell us about recognizing wisdom and how you value the counsels that you've chosen?
Well, it's definitely a interesting question. And I know we talked briefly this morning, and I know that we've had several conversations about relationships, and then also having the conversations also, I know we talked a little bit the other day about respect. So there was a couple things that I wanted to touch on. When I think relationships, I think of diversity of people's experience. I think of the importance of finding common ground. All of us could spend the rest of our lives on calls hearing everybody's opinions and thoughts and feelings about reality. I think for me right now, a big part of at least, my work and interest is trying to explore common ground and doing it in a way that could be beneficial. So, when I think of relationships, I also think about the meaning of discernment. And not to go way into it, but it's a very different life I have now in Colorado, being very quiet and being in nature mostly, and doing a particular path, as opposed to and I wanted to acknowledge what Becky said a couple of weeks ago about, the medicine wheel, because it is the path of unity and diversity. The medicine wheel, red, black, white, yellow, generational, gender related, between men and women. So, that relates to the councils for me, because going again back to, Six Nation teachings connected through my mother's family, very small. I don't really try to accentuate that, like I'm 1/25 so and so, or I know that can be a whole story, and that can also be like an identity, but there is something on an ancestral level where I just acknowledge the importance of council fires and the importance of the different councils that led up to EarthStock, the summit, but even beyond there. A, the community; B, the advisorship that comes out of, what's been evolving and germinating between the Grandmother Council, and the importance of hearing the wise woman eldership perspective, which tends to get steamrolled here in, by the patriarchy. And also the idea of a wisdom council. I know we talked a little bit with SD about that, and we opened it up for discussion to kind of elaborate into that, because even with EarthStock, I mean, I had people, very young people who are like, well, I should be on the wisdom council too, because I have wisdom. And then part of that, in my understanding, was like, well, we also have a youth council, which hasn't really gotten the traction, basically due to a lack of commitment, which is part of, I think, the impotency of some of the youth right now. There is a lack of commitment as they're exploring their truths and trying to find, their passion, their commitment, what they're dedicated to. But I also know there's a lot of youth out there that are very empowered. I mean, look at like Greta Thunberg, right? Like the amazing work she's done, just about calling, speaking truth to power regarding the environment. That might be an extreme case, but I know there's youth out there. So as we move towards the summit, feeling like all of these pieces were very important for collaboration, for respect, for input, for advisorship, for collaboration, just to even think about trying to be holistic. Because, part of being in Colorado as opposed to California, I met lots of people, and lots of young people. I mean, there's a whole, millennial generation that, everyone is born enlightened. Everyone's a god and a goddess. Everybody knows everything. There's no connection to any lineage, any teacher, any teachings. Maybe they've done like a plant medicine ceremony, and it's also very disconcerting, the amount of so-called medicine people. Like, but I don't judge it. It's just something, for me, it comes back to relationships and discernment of what I want to be in relationship with. I want to acknowledge when Patricia was speaking, a lot of this wisdom, for me, I've learned, comes from biomimicry, which is learning to see how nature collaborates and expresses itself, and trying to gather the wisdom out of there. Because I think, even though, like, primarily a lot of people through these councils and a great majority of people at the summit saw common ground, there was also a lot of divisiveness between, preceptions, perceptions, projections, my truth is the truth, and we see it from the microcosm to the macrocosm right now in like huge, very disconcerting ways. So for me, um, which I'm kind of trying to take more of a backseat since the summit and also listen, it's like what wants to emerge, and the fact that we're able to even create spaces to have these conversations is really affirming to me. And although I think in time there will be a youth council element that'll merge, but the idea of giving the grandmothers and giving the voice of the feminine space to speak, and for me just to be present and support and just to listen what knowledge is there, and also the wisdom council. I mean, I don't even really consider myself a wisdom keeper or wisdom council primary. I'm here in support, but also just again listening. So a couple of last things I want to say is I appreciated what Becky had said about clans. I know with my time with the Hopi, it was really amazing to see the different clans, because the clans, each one had a specific role and responsibility within the larger village or community or culture, however lens we're looking at that through. And at EarthStock, we had Ruben Sofke there. I mean, people call him an elder. He says, I'm not an elder, but I am a water priest. So, there's different perceptions of things, but there's different roles and responsibilities, whether it's a fire keeper, a water carrier, whatever it might be. So I think there's a lot of interesting wisdom in that, and how that connects us to our ancestry. Because typically, if you're in a certain clan, you get it from, it's a matrilineal culture. And I know there's matrilineal and matriarchal, but usually the clan is passed through the mother. But I just think there's a lot of power, and I appreciate that the other Patricia's here who I'm getting to know, and Becky, and really everyone is here, because I think, in our society, as we've been programmed, we all want to wear a lot of hats and be multidimensional beings. But I think at some point it kind of breaks down to like, what's our greatest superpower? What do we really bring to the council, to the circle, to the round table, as far as medicine or wisdom or knowledge? And part of me with these councils is knowing that there's other people who know more than I do in specific areas. I have my strengths, and just the importance of understanding that. But unless people are immersed in any sort of culture or tradition or indigenous community, it's hard to understand a clan. I see more these days, it becomes more like cults of personality than clans. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. I think, the potency of certain people that have certain knowledge to propel themselves into creating, either consciously or unconsciously, a hierarchy. I think that's good for that, and that works. But I'm far more interested in being a part of a council and a round table and exploring these types of connection. And the last thing I really want to say is how that connects into this whole idea, and I see this with a lot of people. This whole idea of like entitlement. It's like, well, my perception of reality and what I project is the truth, and like, you know, um, people were saying like, oh, I can take whatever I want from anyone and use it. And I will say there was a big thing a few years ago. I don't go to Burning Man. I'm not a Burning Man fan, but they invited the indigenous community in, and it was a huge appropriation and disrespect. And I know a lot of indigenous brothers and sisters who went and were completely disrespected by people saying, I can do whatever I want and wherever I want. If I want to be topless or wear a thong or wear eagle feathers, or, have my, my store-bought chinopa or whatever it is, it gets to a certain level of entitlement. And for me, part of these councils is we have to, or we don't have to, but we have the opportunity to create a deeper understanding, so that people who don't have the benefit to actually listen can understand some of the importance of tradition and ancestry and lineage. And one of the words that came up in the last week was about respect. So again, for me, relationships and wisdom comes back to finding common ground, but honoring the diversity and having the respect to say, wow, I respect the way you see things, even if I see it differently, and being able to get knowledge from that. And I think eventually it all boils down to true wisdom is just having compassion, which is the ability to express the understanding that we're all connected and interconnected, whether we're humans or animals or nature or, that type of thing. So anyways, that maybe it was longer than 5 minutes, but I just wanted to share that because I've been thinking more about, for me, without having an agenda, like why the councils are important to me. Why is there a grandmother council and why is there a wisdom council? I felt really inspired that SD wanted to reach out to potentially other people he knows from around the world of other traditions. And there's others I know that will circle back from the EarthStock Summit. I have been in communication with Marcello and Hector and others and, Uncle Angangak from Greenland. And, without even having to say a lot, there's a natural resonance, I think, and commonality and unity in the group that doesn't have to be pretentious or, fabricated. There's just a natural grace and wisdom and compassion and understanding. So that's maybe that was too long-winded, but that was some of my thoughts thinking about tonight's council.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you to all of you. I love being able to gather in these ways. And I remember a time when I was growing up that we couldn't talk about these things. It was illegal and we were expected to assimilate. So I'm grateful for every opportunity to come together in our Grandmother's Council, our Wisdom Council, in these ways that we share with everyone who shows up. I am so very grateful to all of you for showing up in this way, and to Pamela for providing the tech that allows us to do this. And I want to give some time for discussion, and we'll stay a little longer if anyone else wants to discuss any of these ideas that have been shared tonight in this way. So Pamela will open our mics and our chat at this time for a few minutes of discussion on these topics.
Speaking of relationships and clans and connections with nature, I would like to honor my parents for raising my brother and me in deep connection with nature. There were a lot of tensions, dichotomies in my family. My mother's father was a chemist for Monsanto. My father was a nuclear physicist who worked for Bell Labs. And so we obviously, as a family, were deeply enmeshed in the Wetiko, in the colonizing systems. And in the midst of that, Mom and Dad shared their love of canoeing with us and raised us in houses that were connected with nature, and taught us concern for what was then called the environment. So thank you each of you for sharing your wisdom and for this clan gathering.
We are. Thank you, Sylvia. Yeah, we are becoming clan. Beautiful. Clan by choice. Anyone else?
I would say something briefly, building on what everybody else said here, and especially most recently what Sylvia said about thanking her parents for raising her with nature and whatever else. Today, if my parents were alive today, they would have been married for 69 years. And yeah, so I'm remembering my mom and dad now as we're doing this. And you know, in a mad world, those two beautiful beings did a wonderful job connecting my brothers and I with our ancestors and with the idea of clan as we knew it. Mom's Scottish, so in Scottish clans are a little bit different, a little less collaborative, maybe a little more cooperative. A little less cooperative, a little more competitive. I mean, if you believe the stories that we hear from the old days. But yeah, anyway, I just, you just brought those two beings to mind, and they fit with the whole conversation and the way they raised me. I think if they were here, they would say, yes, that's our daughter. That's our girl. Be proud of me, and as I am of them.
Sweet. Beautiful. Thank you, Patty.
Oh, yes, Gail. May I say something?
Please, yes.
Yeah. Hi. Oh, sorry. I'm out with the birds in Australia. And gosh, everyone who's spoken just reiterates what's inside me and how I was brought up too. And I give such thanks to my parents. My father died 34 years ago, but my mother's 93 and she does have a dementia, quite a serious one, but she's very smart at hiding it. And and she draws mandalas. She's done about 3,000 in the last 5 years and colors them daily. And that's her mantra. And I was getting annoyed with her from not coming out in the world a bit with me in her old age. I had a plan. We'd travel together and do things, and she won't do any of it. And I have learned that she's sitting at home drawing and coloring mandalas, and they're totally exquisite in a book. And she was a pharmacist, and we weren't allowed any drugs, none whatsoever. Her daughter, me, became a heroin addict and, all sorts of things with drugs. And I just honor Mum. I've been straight for like 40 years, but we've never turned to drugs, although she was the chemist and had to dispense what the doctors wrote. But she questioned things always, but did the right thing. And it wasn't until she finished as a chemist that I can say this now, that she knocked off someone's drugs for her own timing when she thought she would go. This made me very annoyed once because I felt that spirit was in charge, not us. And so I have had to look at all of these concepts I had and how I judged externally with them. And it's been, I want to cry saying this, everything that Becky said and that Michael said, Gail, and the beautiful artist gentleman and the music from Pam, all of it, it makes my heart sing. Sometimes I can't be still when we're online because I'm in the other end of the world and I've got appointments, but I'm totally here and I just want to give thanks. From my mighty River Mitchell on the water basin here with the Gunai Aboriginal lands of where they're very strong people. I'm coming in from that part of the world and I'm with family. So thank you, everyone. And Gail, I am so pleased you're back. I've missed you. I love you. And I'm in deep appreciation of how you've helped my relationship with trees deepen. Mum relates with trees since I was a little girl, talks to them and her plants, everything. We all thought she was mad, but now I know she wasn't, and I've inherited that. So thank you for affirming that I'm in the right family. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tracy, and thank you all for sharing your experiences. We have another group called Solutionaries that Michael is forming for Patty and Becky, who have some solutions to some of these challenges that we all face. And maybe next time in the new moon, we'll talk more about that and give everyone a chance to share their experiences on that level. But thank you all for being here. Thank you all so much. And anyone else really wants to say something, we'll stay a little longer, and then maybe Sylvia will play us out with her flute, give us some flute music to close with tonight. Does anyone have anything they really want to
Well,
say before we leave?
I would just
Michael?
say thank you for mentioning that, Gail, because I know part of EarthStock as a foundation, we are committed to solutions for people, planet, and the future, thinking about 7 generations and more ahead. So I just wanted to mention that and emphasize that because I know at some point when we do these things, we're going to do them on Thursday. And again, I'm not trying to create more things people have to do. That would kind of be like an interview show where people can talk about their projects. People are welcome to come on and ask questions, but that's something that we will be putting out. And we're going to start working with this group too to put stuff out on Regenerative Media TV, which, we're still sorting through 120 hours of content from EarthStock Summit. So, but that is something in the near future where we want to showcase the different, solutions and projects that are people doing so that people can have a platform to share. That way these councils don't become so much of an infomercial. Like, I'm not going to sit here and talk about particularly, EarthStock Foundation for an hour. So I just want to, again, thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you all for being here, for sharing your experiences and your love, your heart in community in this way. We don't say goodbye, we say until again. So, Sylvia, if you will give us some flute music, we will close out tonight and hope to see you in the new moonlight in a couple weeks.